It's proven that diversity creates better teams and better work. But how do we bring in talent that reflects the workforce that we want? Welcome to another episode of Diversifying Your Technical Workforce, a technically learning series produced as a part of the Most Diverse Tech Hub initiative and supported by the City of Philadelphia's Department of Commerce. I'm Deborah Sharmalus, a creator, curator, and organizer who will be your host for this series, with the straightforward goal to give you specific tactics for diversifying your workforce. As a reminder, we at Technically are a news organization that serves a community of technologists and entrepreneurs. For years, our newsroom has worked on technology's longest standing challenges, including how can people have more access to the fastest growing jobs in our economy. Over the last year, as a part of a City of Philadelphia initiative called the Most Diverse Tech Hub, we produced a series of workshops focused on enhancing the tech futures of Black and Brown people by training employers with involving best practices. This learning series you're watching now is a condensed and edited version of that workshop series. Each of our episodes will feature a different esteemed national expert. In this video, we're focused on recruiting with the DEI lens. Let's see what our expert has to say about it.
You might be excited to hear us kind of dive right into specific recruiting topics today, but we're actually going to start a little bit earlier with the foundation for just about everything inside of your organization, which is your culture, your vision, and your values. And that's why we asked you to bring those with you today. As leaders and key decision makers in your organizations, and even if you're not a leader or decision maker, it's still a great reference point to be able to speak clearly about what your culture and values are in your org. And we're going to use that to build foundation for building a diverse workforce strategy today. So it's our understanding that some of you may have attended other sessions from this great organization that have touched on some of these topics, like creating a culture of belonging and mitigating bias. What we're going to do is we're going to apply that knowledge that you might have as we build a DEI recruiting strategy. And we'll go a little bit further than saying you should do this, because we actually believe it's your obligation and responsibility to do so if you're a leader in your organization, and your responsibility to your community. Too often, diversity recruiting basics are simply, where do we find the diverse pipelines? How can I tap into that? But focusing just on those topics will not actually sustain a diverse workforce moving forward, which is what we actually want to do. So imagine for a moment, like you're a farmer and you're only focusing your efforts on finding the rarest, most delicious, most colorful seeds, but you don't spend any time at all cultivating your soil for when you plant them so that they will grow. I tell you that metaphor there to encourage you that the most important thing that we're going to take away here today is intentionality in developing your DEI strategy. Intentionally ingrain these concepts into your organization's culture rather than just trying to sprinkle diversity recruiting strategies on the end as an afterthought. That's going to actually affect your TA strategy to be effective. And this is what's required in order for it to be a bedrock piece of your foundation.
I'm going to talk about why we even care whether your organization's guiding statements promote and reinforce diversity. The reason is really foundational to the work of recruiting through a DEI lens. And so really understanding the why behind this is super important. We believe that in order to adequately demonstrate your commitment, your organization's commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, it's vital that these concepts are really embedded in the guiding principles of your organization. This is how decisions are made, how leadership is chosen, how people are reviewed, and to ensure that your organization is going beyond the we want a diverse workforce to we value and we center our diverse workforce. That's a completely different tone, and it can be felt and seen by your employees, your consumers and clients, your vendors, and even external stakeholders. So further promoting and enforcing diversity through your organization's guiding statements really establishes this common language, which everyone will then use to discuss at the company level and org-wide. It's the foundations to getting this buy-in to doing the work and furthering equity, inclusion, and belonging within your organization. It may be time to assess and refine your guiding statements and core values to reflect your organization's commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion. Once you've done that, you can move into this third step where you'll want to share and promote your commitment and create systems of accountability for your guiding principles. It's only by sharing and reiterating this across your organization's external stakeholders that you're actually going to be able to build a system of accountability. But it is a foundational step in order to build that system. And then finally, we want to ensure that you're not just talking the talk, but you're walking the walk too. So you need to make sure that you're measuring yourself. And I want to clearly say that it's regularly measuring your promise and your commitment to your mission and values. You should be able to always answer questions like, are you really living up to what it is and who it is that your organization say you are? Do your employees inherently believe in your promise? And then do they actually feel and experience in the workplace?
You can't change anything that you don't measure. Heuristic kind of lives and breathes by this. And if you're only recognizing a few groups, you might actually be doing a little bit of a disservice to the other groups and to the intersectionality of people's identities. So we believe that the more groups you recognize, the higher your chances of building inclusion intentionally for someone who might identify with that group. And knowing who is in your organization and where those gaps are ensures that you're addressing employee morale and satisfaction by providing for the needs of even your most marginalized employee. So this in turn creates the chances and increases your chances of likelihood for these populations that will be attracted and then inclined to stay with your organization. And we may already all know this, everyone who was on the call, but to be clear, the business case for diversity in the workforce is very, very clear. It results in more innovation, more profit, you're better attuned to your customer needs. And that's why we're thinking about it here in terms of hiring, because it will matter for the longevity of business.
Inclusion is really like the secret sauce to diversity recruitment efforts. Intentionally creating inclusion is like the public demonstration of your commitment to your people. And it's like where you're putting your money where your mouth is. Similar to Disneyland, where experiences feel magical and organic. There's actually a lot of work that goes behind creating that feeling behind the scenes to make it feel and make your experience that way. So we want your workplaces to be something like Disneyland, magical, harmonious, whatever adjective you want to use to describe it. But if systems of fostering inclusion aren't in place, your diverse talent really may not find the environment welcoming and prevent them from leaving your organization. So where to start? The first thing we encourage you all to do in beginning your journey to inclusivity is starting with an operational and cultural audit, where you can review how you're creating an inclusive workplace by taking a look at the formal and informal processes and systems that exist within your organization. I say formal and informal because I think about this in terms of tangible, intangible, monetary, and non-monetary. So when you're looking at inclusion, tangible may be looking for points of bias within your talent acquisition funnel where underrepresented groups are being eliminated. And intangible may be checking your workforce for a sense of belonging and looking at that information across demographics. A monetary example could be looking at, auditing your compensation packages and benefits, or even moving towards pay transparency. And then a non-monetary would be something as simple as reviewing and auditing your performance management system to ensure that, managers are unbiased in their evaluations of promotions, and that everyone's getting an equitable, performance management experience. So next, once you've audited, you have an understanding of what might need to be recalibrated or codified in your culture in order to mitigate bias. We also want you to create systems where, vocalize where people can vocalize inequities. We like to call that speak up culture, and also promote inclusion. Once you've got all that in place, it is essentially time to create those informal reinforcements to daily behaviors and informal support for all types of people. And this is really the concept of the top down, middle out, where like you ensure your DEI strategy and your recruitment through a DEI lens is coming to life by disseminating this culture from leadership to middle managers out through your employees. And finally, once you have that codified and the informal culture coming together, you can create an explicit employee value proposition, which is essentially your promise to internal and external, potential employees on what they can expect in your work environment. Once you create that, you promote it internally and externally, and that can then showcase and celebrate the good work that your organization is doing to create a diverse and equitable and inclusive workforce. So a couple of things that we can do in order to move towards engaging your workforce. The first thing is even in order to start gaining buy-in and engaging folks, it's really necessary to have a definitive promise for diversity, equity, inclusion that you can share and refer to internally and externally. This may be in the form of your mission statement or perhaps a specific initiative that you'll have ongoing, but having something tangible to point to, regardless of its form, really highlights the thought and the effort that has gone into your goals and establishing a common language to use org-wide, and really creates an accountability stopgap. Once you have this tangible thing that you're moving towards or goal that you're trying to achieve, you need to share that message with employees as well as external stakeholders through a well thought out and intentional communications campaign. Once you have this campaign completed, you're going to move on and really build and implement policies, process, resources, and support that support the initiative, and provide regular updates to your employees and external stakeholders to demonstrate that progress. And in other words, it's like walking the walk. I believe it was Guy who mentioned it earlier, but building ways for your employees to actually engage with your ERGs or other support groups. That is a policy, a system that exists that reinforces and re-engages your workforce into this, into the work. Finally, the fourth thing that you can do is reinforce these policies through those daily practices and business priorities. So this is referencing inclusion work in your all hands meetings and, calling your principals front and centers when setting, business strategic objectives and through your community's through your organization's community involvement and so on and so forth.
I hope I'm not aging myself too much. This is my dad's favorite movie in the world. But I do think it's a really good way to think about how you build these things. If it falls to you in any way to take responsibility for building these things, if you build it, they will come. And what I mean by that is don't wait until your first hire needs accessibility tools. Build it now so it's ready. And that first disability hire feels welcome the first moment they arrive. And then they'll refer all their friends. So now Mercedes is going to start to share the really, really good stuff. The DEI recruiting strategies, building on all of this knowledge we just shared about how important all these pieces are inside of everything.
All right, to wrap up, and probably the part that you've all been waiting for is how can we bring all this information that we've talked about, that we've learned, and actually apply it to a DEI recruitment strategy. There are four main ways that this information can be used. However, I want to encourage all of y'all to start thinking about this and putting your answers in the chat right now. But what is the first thing that you can do after this workshop to support your diversity recruitment strategy? Our goal today, was really to empower you all with the necessary and crucial structural and cultural pieces that needs to be in place in order to promote diversity and inclusion. Hopefully now you can use this information to inform your recruitment strategy, not just to find, but also, and more importantly, keep diverse talent that reflects the richness of our community. So a couple of ways that we will be able to use this. The first is by auditing and updating your talent acquisition process for equitability. This might look like things like analyzing your talent acquisition funnel. So everything from source to hire by demographic category to mitigate bias in the interview and application process and ensure that diverse candidates have a fair shot at getting into your organization. Kristen will go ahead and drop, as I continue talking, a couple of other ways to use this information, but I do want to continue hearing from you all. And if you have any other questions, we'll leave some time towards the end to elaborate. The second way you can use this information today is to create custom goals and strategies around the pipelines that you've identified as gaps today. You can make sure that you want to make sure that in identifying those gaps that there is an emphasis for relatability in that strategy. The third thing is you're going to be able to enhance your recruitment marketing through genuine storytelling. Throughout your discovery process or the auditing and assessment process, you're going to identify and gather a plethora of stories from your workforce around the organization and their personal commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and make sure to collect this data and incorporate it into your strategic recruitment marketing initiatives. There's no reason why this can't be, a part of your careers page or a social media campaign, or even a way to tap into new markets. Finally, by accomplishing everything that we've outlined, so all the steps 1 through 3, 1 through 4, and all the slides in each category, and by truly engaging all of your people in this work, you'll be able to develop your diversity pipeline by tapping into your workforce to source candidates. One thing that we often incentivize is recruiting through your employee resource groups. If you want to tap into a particular community, use that community. Your diverse employees that you currently have can also help you create connections and build communities in new ways that you may have not previously penetrated. You'll have access to this information. And there's a plethora of other ways in which you can develop this content and use your employees to further your efforts.
That's another episode of Technically's learning series on diversifying your workforce. Thank you to our supporter, the City of Philadelphia's Department of Commerce. If you want to dive deeper, all of the most diverse tech hubs reporting and learning, including full recording of these workshops, can be found on Technically's website. Consider joining our public Slack channel to stay up to date with latest reporting, subscribe to our newsletters, and follow us on social media to see our upcoming programming. Once again, I'm Deborah Sharmaluz for Technically. See you next time.